Hi, I'm Mark, and today we're going to run through installing and configuring Houston by Turbine Labs on Kubernetes. We'll be following the guide on our documentation site closely, so be sure to have a look at that as an additional resource. If you'd like to follow along on your own, you'll need a functional Kubernetes install, an API key which you can easily obtain from our site, and TB&CTL, a CLI we use to manipulate API objects. We'll start here with installing the CLI. It's a simple go get followed by a go install, just fairly quick. And we'll initialize a zone to use as a container for our experiments here. We'll also need some sort of app to run a release against. We've come up with a very simple one we use in our all-in-one container demo that we can deploy to Kubernetes as well. So we'll deploy this simple blue server, which will be the first version we test. And we'll look at a client as well that just drives some traffic to it and displays a nice visualization UI. Once we've done that, we can see in Kubernetes we have running pods. These things all look good, and we're ready to set up service discovery to map this existing application into Houston. So the next thing we're going to do is expose a secret in Kubernetes that stores our API key. This means we don't have to store things in config files or pass that around in things that will get logged in clear text. And now we can create our collector. And if we do this, and look at the pods that are running, we'll see that we have a collector, and this process polls the Kubernetes API and looks for running clusters. So now, if we look at clusters we have available, we should see that we have 2 clusters, each with 1 instance. So this is good. The next thing we'll need to do is create a domain and proxy that indicate where we want to serve traffic for this application. So if we go here to our application, we see we have a zone called testbed, and now we'll actually create a new domain and proxy. So this helpfully tells us we don't have any domains. We'll create one called testbed domain. This is great. Now it says we don't have any proxies, also true. So we'll have one proxy that's going to serve traffic for testbed domain. If we do this, we're now ready to go back here and deploy our proxy. So we'll create a new Kubernetes pod. We'll see we'll have a 4th one up and running. And then we'll need to expose this. So instead of running ingress controllers, which is what you typically do, you can just expose this as a load balancer in GKE. So we'll do that. And we'll look, and it takes Google a while to get an external IP address provision for this. In the meantime, let's go back to our app here and set up some routes. So in this domain, we have 2 things, an API and a client that drives traffic against that API. We'll create one for the client first. So everything that comes into / by default will go to client, and we'll call this release group also creatively client. We're going to create one more route to send traffic to our API. So anything that starts with the API prefix, we'd like to go to our server, and we'll call this release group server. And we'll make one small change here. We don't want it to go to all the servers. We only want it to go to production servers. So if we have a label on these pods that come up called stage, we only want ones that are stage prod. And we only want things going to the blue version, even though that's the only version we have out there right now. So let's save this release group. We have an AP or an IP address from Google now. So we can go here and look at our running app. And we can see our client, and it's serving all blue traffic, which is great. So we can go back to our top level view now, and we can see some statistics on latency, requests, and success rate. I'd run this previously, so there's a little bit of data still in here, but this is now live. So what if we want to deploy a new version? So we want to deploy a green version of the service and have it go out. And you'll see that even though we have running pods, it should have already come up. This is great. There's actually no traffic running against that pod. It's still all blue. However, if we go look at our release groups, we'll see that for the server release group, it hasn't discovered it from the API yet, but if we refresh this, hopefully, we'll see that there's now this start release slug here. And that's because it knows that there's a version out there that's marked as prod that isn't taking any traffic. So if we want to see green traffic, we can just move this up a little, start a release, and over here you can see green come in. You'll also see in the charts for latency, request, and success rate, when those populate, you'll see it compared between the old and the new version. If this all looks good, then we can ramp our traffic all the way up to green. And now we can see that the blocks are 100% green. And if we ever decide that that version should go back to blue, it's just a simple slider again to have that shift back to blue. Thanks a lot for following along, and best of luck.